Thank you, Professor. Our Vice Chancellor, our Speaker and guest from Cytonn, member of our council and friend of the university, my colleagues, and my dear students and staff, good afternoon. I was told never to say all protocols observed, because I'm told that means I don't care who the hell you are. Today is your day, so I'll not say all protocols observed. This is your day. We actually came so that you could be able to learn. And I'm told that in every situation, you are either teaching or learning. For me today, I am here to learn. When I look at our forefathers and our fathers, you did the trade that your parents did. You became an apprentice. So what does your father do? So do you know that that could have been your trade? So if your father is a witch doctor, you'd be carrying his tool for him. If your father is a farmer, you'd be carrying the djembe for him. If your father is a teacher, you'd be carrying the chalk for them. I don't know what you want to do, but I want to believe that today's talk will be life and mind-changing for very many of us. So today we are privileged to have a guest. People we only see in the newspapers or on TV, as our Vice Chancellor will say. So I think for me today is a great day to be a member of Zetech University. So at this juncture, I want to introduce our Vice Chancellor, Professor Jenga Munene, to come and give his remarks and introduce our guests. Thank you.
Let's give the DVC a better clap. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm extremely humbled to be in your presence to present to you our guest speaker, Edwin Dande, the CEO of Cytonn Investments. But let me say one or two things. One is that it is one of our strategic goals. One of our strategic goals is to make our students highly employable. That is one of our strategic goals, to make our students highly employable. In fact, our hope is that we are going to compete globally by ensuring that within 6 months, all our graduates are absorbed, within 6 months. But this will mean that proactively, we must make you and link you with the industry and ensure that you have experiential learning that exposes you to the real life situation. For that to happen, we have made it purposefully that every semester we will have not less than 2 to 3 guest speakers from the industry to come and motivate you. I am what I am because the first orientation week, when I went to the University of Nairobi, we were talked to by a former human doctor called Professor Joseph Maina Mungai. And he motivated me a lot. So these talks are not just talks. They should be able to help us to focus. In front of us is the CEO of Cytonn, a man who believes in step-by-step movement in making things happen. And he says, I did a little search on him, and I was impressed by a few things that he says. He says, to be successful, you must be passionate about what you do. And he says, to me, passion is about giving my very best and focusing intensely on the core task or challenge in front of me. And he finishes that statement by saying, I give it all, and when I see results, I get a kick out of it. I hope when you are in class, you get a kick and feel good. He says he believes in hard work and building yourself from the ground. So he doesn't believe in getting things for free. And lastly, he says in one of his statements that there is something fascinating about identifying a problem or an opportunity and putting together a team and going at the problem until it is solved. He's a BSc holder. in accounting in Monmouth University, an MBA from the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania. He's a CPA, and he has been recognized as one of the top 200 business leaders in Africa, and among the top 40, under 40 in 2012. And also in Who and Who in the American University Colleges. This man is married to Gertrude Minor and a father to Zara Dande. And Zara is not yet at marrying age, so you'd have to eat a little bit. So let us put our hands to welcome Edwin.
Good afternoon, everyone. Professor Jenga Munene, the Vice Chancellor of the University, Deputy Vice Chancellor, member of the Council, academic staff, admin staff, all staff of the university, students, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. So it's good to be at Zetech to do what, either it's speak, discuss, or do a lecture. For me, when I got the invite, it was a no-brainer for a couple of reasons. Certainly, the university is known as a place for deep thinking, deep analysis, and writing. So when you invite casual businessmen like myself to come and give a speech, of course, I would jump onto it. It reminds me of being back in college, and it's always a good time when you're in college trying to work your way ahead so that at some point you get into employment, you start a family and grow in life. Secondly, I've spoken at many colleges and many universities, clubs, being invited, but it's the first time I've been invited by a vice chancellor to an academic institution to speak. So definitely that was a privilege that I wanted to take advantage of. And interestingly is looking at it from the side where you speak, where you sit. I was once a student, and interestingly, ironically, the one thing I really did not like was a lecture. So for me to be invited to actually give a lecture, I said this is ironical because I want to take these guys through the very thing that I never wanted to be taken through. So I will hopefully make this a short lecture so that we can move to really the most important part of the discussion, which is essentially a Q&A session is more important than what I have to say. When we interact, you really get to focus on what is in people's mind. And finally, probably the most important is tied in your own tagline, inventing the future, or invent the future. So when I looked at the topic the VC asked me to speak about, which is the entrepreneurial mindset, and I tried to connect it with your own tagline, invent the future, it seemed to fit. So getting to the topic, which is the entrepreneurial mindset. Now, if you look at our own country today, it seems like tenderpreneurship is valued more than entrepreneurship. And what do I mean by tenderpreneurship? We tend to think that as a country, as a culture, making the most amount of money in the shortest time possible with the least amount of work is something that people admire. When people see people with money and donating it or using it for whatever purpose, we are not a society that takes a step back and asks, where is the money from? What tends to matter to us is the money is there and it can be given out. As individuals, as we grow up, I'm not sure whether we've gotten to a point whereby our culture is that of, I need to put in the work and I need to put in the time, and whatever I get back will be commensurate with the time and the work that I put in. Now, I don't think any country can grow and become a developed country if the culture is the least amount of work possible in the shortest amount of time and make the most amount of money. To be able to grow to what everybody wants. Everybody just wants to be able to put food on the tables, send their kids to school, and have a decent life. To be able to grow that kind of society, we definitely need an entrepreneurial culture which takes time to build, takes a lot of work to build, and in it you get out what you put into it. So what, in my view, would someone need to be able to have an entrepreneurial mindset? The very first thing is what attracts you to entrepreneurship. Now, we have this, what I would call a fallacy, that if you want to be an entrepreneur, in most cases, people are pursuing the money. How much money can I make? Because you are going to see organizations built over long periods of time with lots of hard work as Zetech. Then you are going to say, I also want to build my Zetech. Or you will see Equity Bank or Safaricom or even Cytonn and say, I want also to build one. Now, what takes you into entrepreneurship should not be money, or should not be wanting to be your own boss or running away from any particular thing. It ought to be making an impact. Now, I've never had the opportunity of meeting whoever started Zetech, but I'm sure if you are to meet him and speak with him, there's got to be something they looked at and realized that I can do this better. I see technology connected to the name. I suspect there's got to be something about technology education that they looked at the existing education platforms and said, I can do this particular education, technology education better. So the first thing you really need to figure out is, what is the problem in society? What is the problem in the world that you are trying to resolve for? If I were to give other examples that we know, how many people here have taken Uber? Okay. Now, how many people here used to take taxis before Uber? Okay. Now, I can see Madame DVC here putting her hand up. Do you remember the process of taking a cab before Uber? What you had to do? You are in town at night, 10 p.m., and you want to take a taxi. I'll let her discuss. I want to also be a lecturer and now pick on students to answer questions. So I'll ask her to answer that question. It's 10 p.m., you're in Nairobi, you want to take a cab, there was no Uber before then. What did you have to do?
I had to look for a taxi run, or try identify one with a yellow line, or it was those days of London taxis, the black one. And first of all, for me being a lady, I had to look for a safe street because I could not walk anywhere to go and get a taxi. And I go and negotiate with the taxi driver.
So you can hear, you had to look for a taxi line. So that means you get from the establishment and ask people, where can I get a taxi? You get there and you had to negotiate, not only to negotiate, you have to negotiate with the taxi that's ahead of the line. So that in itself takes away your bargaining power. Now, once you negotiate, then you have to answer the question, do you have change? Because when you get to where you are going to have an issue if you don't have change. Once you are done with negotiations, the price, you have change, they might ask you, do you know where you are going? Because you have to then give direction. And then 4 years ago comes Uber. Now, these days, you don't have to ask, where is the taxi? The taxi then comes to you, or the Uber will come to you. You don't have to talk about price. It's observable. You don't have to tell them where you are going because they have an app that will give direction. And interestingly, if you can now remember how much it used to cost, because one of the costs that I could remember is from JKIA to City Center, they would charge something like $1,600 if it was during the day. Now today, if you take an Uber from the airport to town, it's somewhere around $900 depending on the time of the day. Now look, the cost has come down. The experience is much better. There is no negotiation. You decide even if you want to tip. And if you want, you can even share with someone else your ride so that they see exactly where you are. Now, that's an example of an entrepreneurial mindset. Whoever started Uber must have looked at the way we are taking taxis and said, this is really stupid. We can do things better, cheaper, faster. So you have to ask yourself, what is the wrong in society that you want to fix? The other example that you might identify with, or that is really familiar for us locally, is Equity Bank. Now, I still remember how banking halls were perceived when I was growing up. I'm still growing up, but earlier in the days, banking halls were perceived as a place for privileged people. You had to have a salary, and even if it's a salary and a pay slip, it can't be any salary and pay slip. It has to be respectable. You had to be a known entrepreneur. So the mamambogas, the people with what you'd call odd jobs, people that don't have salaries, did not have somewhere to go. Now, then comes Equity Bank, and they opened the banking hall to everyone. Not only did they open it to everyone, they also gave them dignity and called them a member. Now, 12 years ago, when Equity Bank was a building society, it was not a respected brand. Now, fast forward to 10 years later, the largest bank by market capitalization, which means the most valuable bank, is Equity Bank. Coming from a no-name, and you can imagine what the multinationals said about Equity Bank when it started. It's risky, you will lose your money, it's not a good place to be. As I said, I've never had an opportunity to meet your founder, but I'm sure when you started Zetech, as you applied for the university license, I can imagine what other universities said about Zetech. It doesn't make sense, or it's not accredited, or it's not a recognized. Anytime somebody is trying to do something new in society, and that's the way life works. I mean, you should not expect to grow a brand without people taking shots at you, but an entrepreneurial mindset sees a gap, and then they say, we are going to fix this. And I think that is what people like James Mwangi, people like the founders of Uber saw and said, this can be done in a better way. So I would hope, as you think about your own entrepreneurial journey, and being that you're in school, you have a lot of time to think and analyze about the subject, you should always ask yourself, what is it that is driving me to this particular enterprise? And if the issue is, I don't want a boss, I want to be my own boss, definitely the chances of failing will increase, because you are going into it for the wrong reason. If you are running away from employment, you are doing it for the wrong reasons. If you are doing it because you want money, you are doing it for the wrong reasons. That's why 90% of startups will fail anyway. So the odds are already against you. You might as well increase your odds by going into it for the right reason. So ask yourself, why is it that I want to start this entrepreneurial journey? Now, there's also another misconception that to be an entrepreneur, you must start a business. You don't need to start a business. I gave you an example of Equity Bank. The business existed before. It was called Equity Building Society. Then came a management team that just changed the business model to focus on the unbanked part of the population. So you don't have to run your own business to be an entrepreneur. In an existing company, there are so many entrepreneurial opportunities that you just have to look at it and say, how are we doing business today? And how can I just tweak a couple of things so that we can still do the same business, but do it faster, cheaper, and in a way that solves a client's need? Even right here at Zetech, if you have an entrepreneurial mindset and you just sit and look around how things are done, you will find so many things that require an entrepreneurial solution. How can we change things so that life is easier at Zetech just by tweaking a couple of things? So I hope you'd not have the notion that you have to leave your job and become an entrepreneur, though again, there's nothing wrong with leaving your job to become an entrepreneur if you are leaving it for the right reasons. And you also don't have to leave university to be employed. One of the things that we enjoy, some of the things that we enjoy very much, whether it's Microsoft, whether it's Facebook, they've not been done by university graduates. These are people who are driven. They saw an opportunity and said, wait a minute, this is so urgent, I don't even need to finish school, I'm going to go out and execute. So I would hope you'd remember the very first thing is, what is it that is attracting me to go and become an entrepreneur? You have to be solving a pain point in society. Now, once you've figured out what is your pain point, and actually before I go to what is your pain point, the issue of figuring out a pain point for me is not abstract. I can use our own brand Cytonn as an example. When the founding team of 4 came together, one of the things that we looked at and say this does not make sense is the issue of investments. Today, if you have 100,000 shillings and you go to the bank, and you say, I want to invest this for a year, give me an interest rate. Who knows what rate you can get? Any answer? Okay, my next student will be the VC.
I think currently for that amount of money, it is below 4%.
So the VC says if you have 100,000 and you want to invest for 1 year, you are going to get 4% at best. And you can try it by yourself. Just go to a banking hall and say, hey, I'm thinking of investing 100,000. What is the best, for 1 year, what is the best rate you will give me? Now, if you were to get that 4%, you have 10 people, each putting in 100,000, the bank is going to have 1,000,000 shillings. So that is now the deposit side. You are the depositor or the saver, you've gotten your 4%. Now, I go in now as a borrower. I'm in real estate, I want to borrow that same money that 10 of you went and deposited. And I say, bank, I want 1,000,000 shillings. I go through the loan process and it's approved. What do you think will be the all-in? And when I say all-in cost, I mean all costs included, the interest that I will have to pay them, including all the fees. Can you tell what would be the cost of that loan to me? I'm borrowing the same money that 10 depositors have put in and received 4%. Any guess? Okay.
I've got your question. You deposit 100,000, then you borrow 100,000. You need to pay back with interest. Maybe we say for now the interest rate is around 14%, but before the law came it was up to 23%. Maybe for the 14%, you will pay back 114,000 to 123,000.
Very good. He's saying at best it will be 14, though that dropped a little bit to 13. But now that's what you'd call the face value of the cost of money to me. Once you add the cost of interest and everything, you will find that you are paying around 16%. So think about what just happened. 10 depositors went to the bank. Each of them put in 100,000, and they walked out with a contract from the bank saying, every year I'm going to pay you 4% of your money, essentially 4,000 per individual. If you multiply by 10, that's 40,000. I walk in after. You are a depositor, now I'm a borrower. I'm borrowing the same money that just came in. I would have to pay at best, the cheapest is 14%. So think about what just happened. You came in, you walked away with 4%. I come in, I take the same money, now I have to pay 14%. So there's a margin there of 10%. And banking is a very important intermediary. So don't get me wrong that we don't need banking as a function. However, if what you want is a return on your money, because banking is about transactions, if you want a return on your money, there might be a better way to do this banking. The same way Equity stepped back and said, there's got to be a better way to bank the unbanked. The same way, Uber, took a step back and said, there's got to be a better way to take taxis. We asked ourselves, what would happen if we then went to the depositor, in this case the VC, and said, give me that 100,000. I will pay you the same 14% I would have paid the bank. So the only thing is that we structure out the bank, or we bypass the bank. That's why it's called a structured product. So what we did, we said, let's see if we can go to the individual and say, give me 100,000, I shall pay you 14%. Now, the first thing that happens in such a situation is the depositor, in this case, our VC, the first thing they say, that's not possible. It's too high. Because they are looking at how they've always done things. When you are going to the taxi line, had somebody told you, you can just call a taxi from your phone, they'll show up, you'll know the price, you'll say that's not possible. So in entrepreneurship, one of the things you also need to look at, when people say it's not possible, it tells you that you're probably in the right direction. If everybody says it's a good idea, please go for it, you should take a step back and ask, am I really on the right route? So we then go to the depositor and we say, we shall pay you the same 14%. It works for us because we're able to get money faster. If you need to raise 100 million, you just need to find 100 people who each will give you 1 million shillings. You can go through that process and finish it within 2 weeks. If I needed 100 million from a bank, it's going to take me 6 months to actually get that money. By then, the opportunity might be gone. So when I talk about find the pain point, for us, the pain point was the depositor is incredibly frustrated with existing banks. If we went to them and offered them a better rate, they probably would come. Now, since we started this strategy, over the last 5 years, believe it or not, we've raised 11 billion Kenya shillings just by going to individual Kenyans. We have probably around 5,000 individuals that we've raised money from who have come in and said, we shall go invest with you because I have a better return. Of course, once we get the money, we have to deploy it into real estate for us to get the returns that we need. So always remember what is the pain point that you're trying to resolve for. Now, assuming now you've gotten a good pain point, for example, Equity trying to bank the unbanked, or ourselves trying to give a better return to the depositor, the next thing you have to figure out is who is your core team. As one of the greatest entrepreneurs who ever walked the face of the earth, Steve Jobs says, great things in business are rarely done by one person, they are done in teams. So as soon as you have the idea, if it's a sensible idea, your chances of success are higher. If it's a sensible idea and then you get a good team, it even increases your chances of success. So you have to sit and ask yourself, okay, the idea is great, but now I need to work with people. Who are the right people? What are the areas where you think you have a gap so that you get a very good team together? In our case, when we started our brand, I'm kind of the generalist in terms of general management skills. We had somebody else who was very good with local networks and local markets. We had somebody who was very good on legal stuff, and we had someone else who was very good in analysis and execution. So that increases the chances of success dramatically because you are not one individual trying to do many things. We have a lot of what you'd call small and micro businesses, but they'll never grow beyond that because it's one individual trying to be everything. They are procuring, they are selling, they are doing the accounting, they are marketing. To build an institution, you have to be able to have an enterprise approach to your business. So you really need to take a step back and ask, who do I need on the team? And there's always a perception that to create a team, people have to like each other. Actually, a good team ought to be a team of rivals. You don't need to get along. You just need to be able to work along. You need to be able to work together and be able to focus on the goal and deliver in solving the pain point. So be very careful how you put your team together. A lot of people always think that a team has to be a friend or somebody you like or even a family. I would even go further and say, if it is a friend or if it's a family, actually that increases your chances of failure. Look for the right person for the team that you're trying to put together. Now you figured out your pain point. Second is you now have your team together. Now the question is strategy. How are we going to do this? Now when Zetech was set up, I'm almost certain that the founder or the founding team did not go and put it right at the place where, let's say, University of Nairobi or Egerton would be getting students. They had to take a step back and ask, how do I go about this? If I'm going to deliver this education that I believe people want, and there's a gap in the market, then obviously they have to do it in a different way than how people do it. So you have to take a step back and ask, what exactly is my strategy? Because that will also increase your chances of success. Remember, you are trying to get as many pillars as possible to be able to increase your chances of success. So for example, if technology is core to the business you are thinking about, and you have no technology background, and you cannot afford to buy the technology, and you cannot attract into your team somebody with technology background, chances are you are most likely going to fail. So think about how you want to execute your business, what are the strategies, and what are you strong at. If I were to go back to our own example, as Cytonn, I told you about, okay, we are going to bypass the bank and go directly to the individual to be able to raise this money. So clearly, building a sales force becomes a strategic imperative, because as the founders, we can't face everyone in the market. So we then have to build a distribution force and say, a sales force, and say, you are going to go there and collect money for us. Now, once you come up with a sales force as the way to collect money, money is a regulated item. So you can't just collect it, because we are not a bank, neither are we licensed by the CMA then. Right now, we are now licensed by CMA. So what we had to do was to look at regulations and ask, okay, is there a place in this regulatory framework that allows us to actually come and talk to you and be able to raise money from you? And we found within the regulation, there was a place called private offers. So then we started raising money through the private offers regulatory framework. So you have to ask yourself, yes, I've found a pain point. Yes, I have a team, but how am I going to do it will be very important. Hadn't we then gone directly to individuals through a sales force, chances are we would have failed by now. Hadn't we figured out the right regulatory framework where we can actually go and get money from the individual, we probably would have gotten into trouble with the regulators early on. But when we spoke with them, we told them, this is exactly how I'm raising money. This is exactly what your regulations say. And of course, given that nobody knew us then, you have to build trust. So we started analyzing the market for free and circulating it every week, something called Cytonn Weekly, so that when people actually meet our sales force, they say, yeah, you are the guys who are actually analyzing the market, because you want to make sure people trust and know that you know something about investment. So you have to think very carefully, because it's unlikely that the idea you have has never been thought about. So it's a question of how you go about the idea that will increase your chances of success. So again, I'll keep building on it. You found your pain point, you have your team, you've now figured out your strategy. This is how we are going to go about it. The last thing, and that's where we really, really do badly as an economy or as a developing country or as an emerging market country, is execution. Now, getting things done. You know, there's one thing to say we shall attend a lecture on Thursday, but it's another thing to actually wake up, dress up, and actually go to the lecture. I don't know how many people, but I'm sure there are people who would have wanted to come, but for whatever reason did not come. For us to do the things we said we would do exactly when we said we would do them, and doing them in the manner we said we would do them, is incredibly hard. We have a lot of excuses. I had a funeral, people were sick, my car broke down, my phone was not working, and all of them are good excuses. And actually, a reasonable person cannot miss an excuse for not doing something. You will always find a very good excuse. And that's not to say the excuses don't matter. The excuses are important, but entrepreneurship is about executing against all odds. So yes, I might have challenges, but I've made certain promises to my clients. There's no way they would come and I start telling them about my troubles at home or about my personal issues. The reality is, what brought the individual investor to our brand was the desire for the high yield, the 14%. And that's what they want. That's why they left their bank that was giving them 4% in the example that we had to pursue 14%. So once I make the commitment that I'm going to deliver for you that 14%, I have to do everything possible to deliver. That's not to say we are perfect. When you make mistakes, you step up to it and you correct. But in entrepreneurship, if you want to succeed, it's incredibly important that you are very focused on results and the delivery of those results, because you are working against a lot of odds. And if many things can go wrong, I mean, you don't have unlimited amount of cash, so you have to work very hard and make sure that the cash flows that you have, you are making the very best use of them. When you have an idea and you want to execute, as human beings, we like to talk. We are social animals. We are political animals. Yes, let's have the debate on how to do it. But at some point, all debates must end, and then we start executing. So it's very important when you think about execution with that team that you brought together, that you have a view how you will make decisions. There are times you will not agree, but you are still committed to the goal. So how will you make decisions in times where the stakes are high, but you cannot agree on how to do something? So you need to think about that very, very early in your strategy as you're thinking about entrepreneurship. So think of the 4 pillars, your pain point. What is the wrong in society that you want to fix? Get the right team. Think about your strategy, and the most important is execute like hell, as Jack Welch says it in his book. But even if you did all that, you have it all going and you're executing, you're now going to deal with what I would call the softer issues. Now, to manage any market, to manage anybody, to manage any team, you now have to first start by managing yourself. I don't know how many managers, before you actually put on your suit, dress up, and go to work, a lot of times we'll think about where we are going to work, who we are going to manage. It doesn't come easily to us to think about the first person I have to manage is myself, my emotions, my orientation, because we are still human beings. People look at entrepreneurs or entrepreneurship as something that's out of the odd. It's just a job like any other. It's just a job like being a student, being a VC, a DVC, a council member. To do it well, you must first manage yourself as an individual, because if you don't do that, then of course you cannot manage other people. And if you don't manage yourself, other people will not have respect for you. And management is nothing more than having influence. And the best way to have influence is to earn respect. And the only way you earn respect is first respecting yourself and managing yourself. So you could get all the core pillars right. But if you don't get your own pillar of managing yourself, then of course it increases the chances of failure. Because remember, in this entrepreneurial journey, at any particular point, you are trying to reduce the chances of failure and you're trying to increase the chances of success until you gain such momentum that the enterprise now takes off on its own and becomes a corporation, an organization where no particular individual really matters. And it's good I'm talking at an institution that itself is a product of entrepreneurship. I'm sure when the organization started, if we were having this talk, the founder would be somewhere around. Now, it's reached a point where it does not depend on an individual. It's now an institution with an org structure, with policies and procedures. So you have to work very hard until you get it to a point where it's an institution so that it takes off by itself. Now, as I come to the end where we go into the question and answer session, remember for where we sit, it's not just what I would call good to have entrepreneurship. I would say for a developing world, a developing country like us, it's actually a necessity. One of the things that we must do to be able to improve on our standards of living. Why do I say that? Look at our currency. It's always depreciating. I don't know what are your earliest memories of the exchange rate, Kenya shilling and the US dollar. Let me start from the stage. What's the earliest exchange rate you can think about? Anyone? Just put up your hand, wherever you are. Surely you must have. I want somebody younger. I know you're young at heart. I want a student. What's the earliest exchange rate you can think about? Kenya shilling to the dollar. The lady?
96 Kenya shillings to $1.
So her earliest memory is 96 Kenya shillings to $1. Now, I'll come back to you, the dean. What's the earliest exchange rate you can think about?
Well, I remember the Canadian dollar. The US dollar was about 1 shilling to about 15 around there, because it was 112 for the Canadian dollar. 110.
So I had 12, 10, 15, but you get the point. Okay, I see him smiling. Let me see.
But I remember the far I can go was when $1 was 7 Kenya shillings.
So think about it. The earliest memory is when $1 was 7 Kenya shillings. Where is it today? It's now at 104. Now, do you think 10 years from now it will be above or below 104? Above. Everybody agrees above. And why is that the case? At any particular point, we are importing more than we are exporting. Now think about, and some of the things we export are really ridiculous. We will export coffee, then buy back Nescafe. Now surely if you keep living like that, your currency will always depreciate. Now I'm not a food expert, but I really think if I were to spend, and I know we are doing local coffee, we have Dormans and all that, but somehow people still buy Nescafe. Now, if really we put our mind to it, we need to be able to produce coffee as good as Nescafe and now reduce the amount of import. Because if you export coffee and you buy back processed coffee, your currency is always going to depreciate. No. So given where we are, it's really important that we get to a point where we don't have to import pencils. We don't have to import sugar. There's a lot that we are importing that an entrepreneurial mindset should be able to resolve. So for where we live, and when the Western world calls us a developing country, an emerging country, or third world country, the reality is that they are right, because it takes a third world mind to export raw coffee and then buy back Nescafe. It takes people who have no self-respect to be able to do that year in, year out. And the only way to change it so that our currency stop depreciating consistently is to be entrepreneurial. The second reason why it is a necessity, almost like a survival for us, let's look at our own lifestyle. Our roads could be better, our healthcare could be better, education could be better. Here you have good education, but not everyone can access a Zetech. Go back to your own village or your rural areas, the education could get better. The only way for things to get better is entrepreneurs standing up and saying, this doesn't make sense, I think we can do better. So for us, it's not just an abstract thing that we need to pursue entrepreneurship. It is really, really critical that we have entrepreneurship at the core. I don't know if you have what I would call an innovation hub at Zetech, where people with entrepreneurial ideas can actually go and test their ideas. Let's be realistic, majority of them, if you have the innovation hub or the incubation hub, majority of those ideas will fail. That's just how it is. But the 10% that survive will have a dramatic impact. And you don't need many. You just need a Facebook, you just need an Uber, you just need an Equity Bank, and that will uplift the standards of living. So I hope that for those who are interested in entrepreneurial journey, that you find a way to start your own journey, fully knowing the odds are against you. But for those who will succeed, the impact will be dramatic. So I wish you the best of luck, myself and the Cytonn brand, if we can ever be helpful in this entrepreneurial mindset journey. Do not hesitate to contact us or reach out. When entrepreneurship flourishes, it lifts pretty much all boats. Now, I talked about Equity Bank, and one of the people I admire is James Mwangi of Equity, and I remember him saying, as I close, if you get an advantage, if you get an opportunity, take advantage of it. So yes, I'm here speaking about an entrepreneurial journey, but I also support the brand called Cytonn. So I'll use this opportunity to also encourage anyone here. We have our financial advisors. I don't know if any of the financial advisors are in the room. I can see them outside, the two gentlemen. There's a gentleman and a lady in a white shirt written Cytonn. If you're curious about any of our products, whether it's real estate, whether it is the money market fund, you can start with as little as 1,000 Kenya shillings, whether it's the Cytonn education investment program. Talk to them and ask them, okay, I'm interested in investment product. What do you guys have for me, or how do I get in touch? With that, thanks a lot. God bless you and God bless Zetech. Asanteni.